Hello and welcome to the Super Rugby Semi Finals review brought to you by DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for rugby predictions and opinion. And yes, I'm sorry that I didn't get a preview and opinion out about the semi finals. Real life, unfortunately, got in the way. But if you would like to support us financially so that real life doesn't get in the way in future, then you can do so by signing up on Periscope to become a Patreon. Rewind that. Sign up on Patreon so that and that would help us fund all of this kind of stuff and buy things like microphones, etc. That's all in the links below or comments above and all that kind of stuff. So do become that, please. So this weekend we had two games. Obviously, the Crusaders hosting the Hurricanes and the Lions hosting the Waratahs. First up on Saturday was the Crusaders versus the Hurricanes. And this was after I'd gone out and watched a Minor 10 Cup preview. So when I watched a Ranfurly Shield challenge game between Taranaki and Poverty Bay. Watched Taranaki put in a good performance there, 70-odd-0, whatever it was. I'll be at the Taranaki versus Wanganui next weekend as well. So if you're there, give me a shout. I'm going to be down there watching that game. But let's kick off with the Crusaders versus the Hurricanes. And the Hurricanes showed their kind of had sort of possession early on. Showed that they were going to try and treat this pretty much like a test match with Geordie Barrett taking a long-range penalty early on, which he missed. And then after that, basically the Crusaders took control. Or perhaps that's really tad harsh, but I mean, early on, Richard Mo'unga showed that this was going to be he was going to boss this game. Scored a try after a good Hugh break. Two players who had good games in this one. Lots of people talking about Richard Mo'unga and how he potentially even outplayed Beauden Barrett in this game as he led his team around the park and made some good breaks as well. He also was decent off the kicking tee, as he bashed over early on. The Gillian Surveyor then did score one out wide for the Hurricanes. There's a bit of dispute as to whether he actually got the ball down or not. But the referee said try on field, and there wasn't enough evidence to overturn that decision. But it was definitely touch and go. And so the Hurricanes' kind of defence really kind of bent but didn't break during that first period. Because the Crusaders had 66% of the possession and 64% of the territory in that first half. But eventually that did tell with Bridge scoring one out wide with a nice missed pass from Hall. Hi Christian, Jack and Andre Hall, thanks for joining us. And as I said, please do put comments in the live chat. That will also help us with this one. And one of the comments there was that the Hurricanes kept kicking the ball away, and it did feel like that during the game. But looking at the stats, the Crusaders in the end kicked it 24 times from hand to 18 by the Hurricanes. So in the end, it wasn't that telling. One of the things that we will talk about in that is that the first game was more about territory. The second game with the Lions and the Waratahs was more about possession. You can see that Lions only kicked it away 15 times and the Tars 9. So what's that? So that's 24 kicks in that game compared to 42 kicks in this game, which gives you an idea that the two teams were playing. The games were two very different games in the styles of how they were trying to go about winning it. But in this one, really, the Bridge got that one out wide. The Crusaders do what they do all the time, and in that sort of 10 minutes around half time, they really did take this game and put the winning scores together. Two penalties just before half time, and then Havili scored after another good Hugh break, and suddenly it was 25-7. And at that point, I put a tweet out saying that's pretty much game over, and it was. The Crusaders were the far more clinical. Hi Paula, thanks for joining us on the old Facebook there. The Crusaders were the far more clinical. The Hurricanes had their opportunities, but really just couldn't finish them off. They really needed to score a few more points early on, and probably should have got that first score, but they didn't. They didn't really seem to use Laumapi as well, as Christian just said in the comments. But also, if we look at how the Hurricanes have scored their tries against the Chiefs, they had one interception try, and then all their tries, or the other tries, came off scrums, I think it was at first. And then if you go back to the Blues game, it was the same, except all the tries came from lineouts. And they were all of the Hurricanes tries in the previous couple of games have come from first phase off set piece ball. And in this game, the Crusaders dominated that breakdown. We had the Crusaders won all of their lineouts, won all of their scrums. Whilst it says that the Hurricanes only lost 2 of their lineouts and only lost 1 scrum, that scrum, even when they did win that ball, was going backwards and was not a nice platform for them to run plays off. And again, there was definitely scrappy ball from lineouts as well, and so they didn't have that platform for those first phase moves that had won them the last 2 games that they played. And so you can see where the problems were. Also, the tackling wasn't up to scratch. The Crusaders 82%, the Hurricanes at 79%, just slightly below. But they made some amount. Also made some amount of tackles. That meant that 34 missed tackles by the Hurricanes to 24 by the Crusaders. This was a game where the Crusaders again were more clinical when they got the ball. They scored around half time, like they always did, and they used their set piece dominance to basically cut off the supply of points that the Hurricanes have used in their past few games. Christian goes, says Bowden didn't play very well, concerned his form heading into the Rugby Championship. Something that Ashwin and I talked about on the All Blacks edition was, are the All Black selectors asking one of the things that they mentioned about Damon McKenzie was his decision making and wanting to make him and having better decision making around that side of things and not being quite so risky. You got a feeling that have they also been asking that of Beauden Barrett? Have they bred that out of his game? Which would be a real shame if they have. He's definitely not trying as many crossfield kicks as he was 2 seasons ago. Is that down to the defensive structures, or is that down to the fact that he's not allowed to try so many things? And he did have that break in the second half. And also maybe defences have just learned about him very well as well. So hence he's being marked all the time. But he did have that break in the second half where he nearly scored a try, but just came up short. By the time that the Canes did score a try, it was as time had run out and Ben Lamb scored it. And it was all just too little too late. There was a crossfield kick actually from Mo'unga that was scored as well. So are we going to see any? It was a very good performance by Mo'unga. We've got a fly half who's likely to become a 2-time Super Rugby champion. That looks like he's going to get left out of the All Blacks matchday squad, if not out of the All Blacks training squad entirely. As I don't think the All Blacks coaches are going to veer away from having Beauden Barrett and Damon McKenzie on the bench. Other players that had good games, Jack Goodhue was one of them. I talked about he made the breaks for 2 of the tries. So out of those 6 carries, 2 of them were absolutely key. He only had two clean breaks, and those 2 clean breaks both led to tries. But if we actually look across that back line from the Crusaders, we see that Havili had 2 clean breaks, as did Tamanivalu, as did Bridge as well. Crotty also got himself 1, and Mo'unga had 2. They all made, Crotty was the lowest with 49 metres, Tamanivalu the highest with 61, but all of them made around about 50 plus metres, which shows that how they all spread the work around between them, which is very good. Amongst the forwards, Kieran Reid actually had more carries than any other player in that Crusaders side, and that's good news after he's come back, obviously, from injury and surgery. And Scott Barrett, after his week off last week, or was it the week before, also is got through a chunk of work. Gareth Evans, a player that had a really good quarter-final. He also showed up here as well. And Brad Shields, as you'd expect, put in a lot of work. And kind of interesting as to as did, but Brad Shields missed 5 tackles for his 15s. He missed the most tackles in this game, but he did actually try and attempt some of the top ones. Matt Todd, though, shows you how it's done. 21 tackles, none missed. He picked up a try as well. So yeah, he had a big game in there. And then looking through the penalties, Owen Franks and Tamara Allen both gave up 2, but props quite often do around scrum time, don't they? So that gives you an idea as to some of the sort of top players in this. Richard Mwanga, but head and shoulders out there. Ben Lamb actually picked up that last try, but was was controlled around that, though. So that was the first game. And I know there's going to be lots of people saying, good things about Richard Mwanga, that he is a very good 10. But he is sat behind that Crusaders pack, which said dominated the set pieces and gave him lovely ball. So that meant that the Crusaders were going to definitely host the final. And the only question then was it going to be a repeat of last year's final against the Lions, just this time at the other way round? So actually in New Zealand rather than South Africa, or were the Waratahs going to come over and a repeat of a final a couple of years ago, where again the Waratahs were at home but just won when Blackadder was in charge. The Tars, or did the Tars have a great start, or did the Lions have a slow start again? The Jaguares got up against them. The Bulls got up against them. And then the Tars got up against them as well. And that's the third game on the trot for the Lions. If they do that against the Crusaders, they are going to be in for an extremely long night, and they cannot afford to come out slow. And it was out wide where they made that where they made that kind of that ground, in particular down the left. First off, Hannigan went out wide, scored out wide after Folau had disrupted a high kick, and let's be honest, that's what we need to see from the actually the Tars on there. We need to see more of that from Folau in this game. Naravoro had a great break. Then the ball came back out and Folau scored on the other side. So. And Navarro was one of those players that didn't get used enough here. We saw him with that early danger. But if we actually look at, I'm going to quick look at how many runs he actually made, and Navarro only made 5 runs in this game. But with 5 runs, he ended up getting 71 metres running, which was more than any of the other players on the Tars, and made him the 3rd highest overall. They really needs to use him more, get him more space, and get the ball out to him more, because that led to one of their tries. So suddenly, after less than 10 minutes, we saw that the Tars were 14 points up against the Lions. And this was one of the things mentioned earlier during the show, was how little kicking there was in this game compared to the last game. So I should remind myself exactly how many it was, but the Lions only kicked the ball 15 times, the Tars 9. Both sides wanted to keep ball in hand. And we're talking about a game here that's been played at altitude. So kicks could go a long way. You could definitely get yourself a lot of territory if you got your kicks right. But both sides decided that actually holding onto the ball was much more important in this game. All that first 10 minutes was all the Tars, and so we've got the Lions here with 54% possession and 54% territory. And basically the way that this was the first 10 minutes was Tars, the middle 20 odd minutes was Lions, and then the last 10 minutes of that first half was Tars again, or they came back a bit more at the end. Quagga Smith got the first try. Then we had one of the tries of the season by Dante. Wonderful individual try where the ball he received a kick off, ran at a slight angle, picked his spot, saw that there wasn't that sweeping defender, chipped over the top, collected, and then used his pace to go in and score. Wonderful try by Dante. And then Marks got himself a line-out maul try, a team try. So suddenly it was 19 unanswered points, and the Tars were under the cosh. Late on, the Tars decided to not go for three, and you're thinking, right, there's only a couple of minutes left here. Perhaps they should have narrowed the margin. In the end, they kicked for the corner. Nice, a good little trick move at the front of the line out, and they went over. And so at half-time, it was 19-all. Not the kind of score, when you look at it being 44-26, you're thinking that this was. The Tars had the best of the first 10 minutes. The Lions came back, and then the Tars managed to come back again. In the second half, interestingly enough, we saw the Lions kick a penalty just to take the lead, and then perhaps one of the decisive moments of the game was the yellow card to the Tars. Now, yes, the Tars had been caught offside quite a few times, but that was generally coming offside and obviously being offside to come and make a tackle. So a player getting caught. This was one of the few times, I can't remember another time when a lazy runner got in front of the ball, went in the way of the ball. So I thought it was a bit of a harsh yellow card, to be honest. I can understand why it happened. And when you look at the stats, that the Lions gave up 7 penalties, the Tars gave up 15. So if you're going to give it that many penalties, you're definitely going to run the risk of getting a yellow card. And that really was what hurt them, because the Lions came back, scored 2, or the Lions didn't come back, sorry. The Lions stretched out their lead with 2 tries during that time. Another Marks line-out maul try, and Quagga Smith again going through a few players and showing his pace to score. And that was going to be a thing about this game, is that tackling this game was abysmal. 69% by the Lions, 68% by the Tars. Both sides, obviously, both sides not tackling very well at all. And the Lions basically survived because the Tars were making too many mistakes. We saw the ball thrown into touch a couple of times as well. So that really, but I think that yellow card was that key moment. With that 14 men, the Lions managed to get those points. I see some comments about the fact that altitude catching up with them, but the Tars did show they could come back and score at the end of that first half, and it really was when they were down to 14 men that they lost their points. They came back and scored at the death with 75 minutes. So there were 5 minutes left, but it was too little, too late. With some great lines and handling after a pretty poor kick, exit kick by the Lions. I think they were trying to put it short and collect it themselves, but actually what they should have done is just kicked it long when they were 37-19 up. They should have they should have just kicked it long, and so they didn't kick it long. And they gave the Tars that territory that they needed to score a try. But I say it was too little, too late. The Lions got a late try as well, as the Tars were trying to play out of their own half, but then the Lions managed to score again. As Andre says, altitude catch in the last 20 minutes, not in the first 20. Yeah, and that first 20, and it was. I think it was a yellow card more than the 20 minutes that more than the altitude that really caught the Tars in this one. I mentioned the poor tackling. And yeah, the discipline really where the Tars fell down, because not only did they concede those 15 penalties, they also conceded another couple of free kicks as well. So that's 17 times the whistle blew against them compared to just 7, and that's really not going to help you in a playoff game. Some of the players, obviously, we've talked about Naravoro, Folau also, both were key. Beale, obviously slotting into that first receiver, or switching that first receiver role with Foley, and you can see both Bernard Foley and Curtly Beale got through 25 passes. That's both of them passed the ball more than Nelson Yankees, and no one else, apart from the scrum halves, got past 10. They're all in single figures on for the rest of the players in the game. So yeah, that's a key thing is that of them. I did see some comments about Curtis Rona having a really poor game on Twitter, but personally, I didn't think he was. I didn't think he was that bad. Just his normal self, nothing special, obviously. Quagga Smith, fantastic game, 2 tries, 109 metres running with ball in hand, made him the top metre carrier. Dante, we talked about his individual try, that's where most of his 84 metres came from. Marks was picking up a couple of line-out maul tries, that's more team stuff. Combrick did okay, as did Coetzee from fullback as well. Who got through the shift on the defensive side? Well, Hannigan, Miller, Wells for the Tars, obviously missing. Whilst the Tars did miss Hooper, I think Miller has stepped up and played pretty well in his absence. On the other side, Mosnat, who wasn't as strong at the line-out as we've seen him previously, got through a lot, as did Whiteley as well. Good to see him back from injury. He's also been out for quite a long time. But the Lions were just too good. The Tars were just too fallible, and they just got their discipline wrong, which lost this one. But this doesn't feel like the Lions side from the last couple of seasons. Heading and they're going to be heading over to New Zealand. So 2 seasons ago, they lost to the Hurricanes in Wellington. Last season, they obviously lost to the Crusaders at home in Joburg. And now they have to go play the Crusaders in Christchurch. And let's be honest, the Crusaders have looked like champions-elect this season. It's very difficult to see them not winning this one. The Lions, what do they need to do? Well, first off, they're going to need to be competitive at set piece. They can't let themselves be dominated in the same way the Hurricanes were. Their tackling has to be better than this. That 60% is not something that's going to win you a game against the Crusaders. And finally, the Lions have got to start a lot better. They can't afford to go down 14 to 19 points like they have done in the last 3 games. On the Crusaders side, well, basically more of the same, isn't it? For them, basically just be clinical, have a solid set piece, and tackling, and a solid defence, which is what they've had, and that's basically what they're going to need to win this one. I mean, whilst the other teams got through 7 and 15 penalties, the Crusaders gave up 5 penalties in that game, only 7 by the Hurricanes. So again, if they're going to have that discipline and that tackling, how are the Lions going to get the territory to score points? So that's my analysis of the 2 games from the weekend. I'll be trying to get my prediction video out tonight, but then again, I already just told you that it's hard to see the Crusaders not win, so you can see which way I'm going to be going. I'll be back tomorrow night with the #rugby chat and Friday with the All Blacks. Sorry, Wednesday with the All Blacks edition, and Thursday with the preview of this game, where we hopefully will have both teams named. Normally, the South African teams don't name till midnight, but hopefully we'll have that named earlier by the Lions because it is in New Zealand. So hopefully so. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. Don't forget to hit that like button, share, retweet, as this is live on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, as well as having a podcast as well, so you can listen to it on the go if you want to, as a podcast. So all those ways of getting this content, I guess it's supposed to be called. So please feel free to share all of those, let all your friends know about it. And as I said earlier, please do consider becoming a Patreon. For $1 a month helps me with microphones and all of that kind of lovely stuff. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all tomorrow night.